Hello, and welcome to this edition of the CLARENDON Chronicles podcast. My guest today is Peter AHYE. Peter is a hugely successful businessman with a strong track record of delivery in the corporate world, and has always been an entrepreneur at heart, responsible for creating and managing innovative organizations. Extremely well known and respected in the Yorkshire, England business community, Peter is currently CEO of Hexagon Consultants, a multi-million-pound business transformation company that he founded in 2015. Hexagon delivers business improvement with a focus upon operational supply chain, with a strong concentration on outcomes given his financial background. Prior to this, Peter actually successfully founded his own food manufacturing business, a venture inspired by his passion for food, developed by his family heritage from Trinidad in the Caribbean. Originally an economics and accounting graduate from the University of Leeds in the UK, Peter then became a chartered accountant with Price Waterhouse, and before becoming his own boss, held a number of very senior CFO roles in international businesses, working for Next PLC and even the Barclay Brothers in one of the largest and most successful UK retail turnarounds. Knowing him as I do think he would absolutely love to help some of the big corporate challenges that are around at the moment. Peter has very generously joined us today to share some of the secrets of becoming an entrepreneur. And if we have time, we might even have the opportunity to talk cricket as well, or as context, this is how Peter and I got to know each other many years ago now at university when we both played for the first 11. I should add that Peter was somewhat more successful as a batsman than I was, becoming university captain, whereas I was more generally and appropriately known as a jolly good tourist and more sensibly someone who could drive the minibus. Peter actually went on to play for the British universities and got to county second 11 trials. And then he decided to become an accountant. He has made Yorkshire his home and resides on the outskirts of Harrogate with his wife, 2 kids, Labradors, chickens, goodness knows what else, and you think you get the general picture. So, Peter, welcome to my podcast. Firstly, thank you so much for your time today. I know it's a really busy time. It always is, actually, for you, Peter.
Jeremy, great to see you, and no, thanks for having me on. You know, having seen some of your previous podcasts, it's great to have the opportunity to chat with you. So
no, great to speak to you after a few years and just actually get behind the person. We've known each other a while. Peter, as I mentioned in the intro, it's a lengthy introduction actually because of everything that you've done. You seem to have developed the technique of becoming more successful the more years you are in business as time has gone by, and no obvious signs yet of slowing down. So can I actually take you back to the beginning a little while, actually, and perhaps share with the audience some of the background and the heritage, maybe some of the things that have led you to become as successful as you are today?
Yeah, sure. So Jeremy, I think before I answer that, and it's very kind of you to point out some of the successes. I don't want anybody listening to this podcast to think that it was a straight line. It never is, and anybody that pretends it is not telling the truth. But for me, you know, for me, the success that I've managed to achieve and still want to achieve is a mindset, and I'm going to start there. That I've been lucky that I'm one of these people that is a glass half full individual. And I think if you have that sort of characteristic about you, you're able to push through the sort of the highs and lows. And I come across many people even today in Hexagon Consultants, my business, and people just get stuck in the past, and it really holds them back. So, you know, I think today, you know, you'll hear me talk more about that as we go forward. In terms of personal circumstances, well, listen, it's not been a straightforward journey. I was born in London. My parents were from the Caribbean, my dad from Trinidad, and my mum was from a Grenadine island called Carriacou. And they had four children, and then we went back to Trinidad 1 year for Christmas and stayed. So it wasn't a planned return to the Caribbean, it just evolved. And I lived there between the ages of 5 and 16. And the older I get, the more I reflect on it, and I think what a wonderful experience that was. It really has helped to define who I am in many ways. I'm going to say from the outset, I could never work in the Caribbean, though, right? It just would drive me absolutely bonkers. As much as I love things about the Caribbean, I love working in the UK, in the environment that's been created. So, yeah, so I came back to the UK, went to school at Watford Grammar School. I was running into O levels, so I had to change curricula. I found that really difficult. I went from West Indian history to English history. The whole thing at, the age of 15, 16 was a real disruption. And I took it in my stride because I was a very capable teenager. But I think I underestimated just sort of the impact of that change. And that meant that it's fair enough to say I've pushed on through, but I struggled at the time with that. But what was interesting was my cricket kept me strong. I was really good at cricket. I stood out in my school, and everybody loved me as a result. So that kind of gave me a platform to then go on to build from when I first came back.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. The thing I take out of this actually, Peter, and some of these things we've never spoken about before either. My sport kept me going as well, because I was, sort of 7 stone wet through, quite booky as an individual in teenage years, but people tended to think actually he's the captain of the football team and he's the captain of the cricket team, so I'll be a friend because you might pick me actually. And it was great upbringing as well. So what led you to going through that phase, Peter? What led you into economics and accounting, coming up to Yorkshire, which you transitioned from the Caribbean to Watford, and then you get exposed to the great county of Yorkshire. What was that like, coming up to Leeds, maybe for the first time, for example?
And it was, I arrived in Leeds to go to university, because I came from a background where we didn't have lots of money. There was no, well, I'll go and see 5 universities beforehand and decide. I got an offer from the University of Leeds. When I looked at the other ones, I thought that's the one that I wanted to accept, and boy, am I glad that I did accept it. I landed, for those of you old enough listening to this, on Wellington Street, where the bus station was in Leeds, and I stepped off of that coach, National Express coach, as if it was yesterday in my mind now, with a suitcase, a hold-all. And my mum had saved up to give me £250 to get me going, and that was it. Welcome to Yorkshire.
Welcome to Yorkshire. Yeah, that's it.
Welcome to Yorkshire. And off I went. And as I said, that glass half full, that positive momentum that you can gather from a can-do positive mindset just propelled me forward and took me forward. And I embraced everything that came at me.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I had similar experiences sort of coming across to Yorkshire, and I just remembered it was far colder than it ever is nowadays. But maybe that's just me. So and after that, Peter, yeah.
Sorry, I was lucky. In my first month, I thought I'd landed back in the Caribbean. I kid you not. For the whole of October and into early November, there was blue skies and sunshine. It was almost welcome to Yorkshire. But
okay, I think you can take off your rose-tinted spectacles there, Peter.
It soon changed. You're absolutely right.
Coming back after December was always the thing for me. But
yes,
and then you became like I did actually, Peter. You went into what at the time was the Big 8, and you went into the world of chartered accountancy with Price Waterhouse. What was your thought process then? Because you got a big opportunity at that point to do lots of things, as many people do at the end of that phase. What inspired you to do that?
Let me just go back a bit. In Trinidad, as I was going through the curricula, and I think now I reflect on it, I think the Caribbean island of Trinidad and some of the Caribbean islands, the syllabuses that they were offering to their students even back then was way more advanced than we even do today in the UK. And what really? I mean by that, if you were not good at sciences in the UK, there's limited route and scope for you. You kind of get pushed on through the system, right? You must keep doing it, you must keep doing it. Whereas they split you off into two streams. And very early on, I was studying commerce and accounting and business related subjects that just came naturally to me. So I wasn't a fan of health, physics and chemistry, and so it just didn't gel with me, but put me into accounting and I was in my element. So having used that and then dropping that when I came back to go to the grammar school, I then went to university, and it was a no-brainer for me. I wanted to do economics, something with accounting in, and beyond that, I wanted to do something that was took me on to become an accountant. And I was lucky enough to be asked to become the captain of the University of Leeds First 11, and in that process, as it happened, Price Waterhouse used to play against the university as a regular fixture. I met a few partners. I pretty much got interviewed. I don't think it was in the changing room, but in the clubhouse a few times. And I was one of these. I was in one of these very, very enviable positions that by the end of my second year at university, I had a job offer, unconditional job offer from Price Waterhouse to join them in the September, and that was the end of it. That was the end of my my trying to find a job and looking at any other accounting firms. So, the path just opened up for me.
Yeah, it feels, Peter, like you used your time in the cricket team slightly more productively than I did. I think, but what I recall about the cricket team is that we used to go down to, and for those people watching from you, they'll know the Three Horseshoes in Wheatwood, which is where all the Yorkshire team used to go at the time. So,
yes. Yeah.
And we used to go to the same, but we digress.
Yes.
So having done that, and I agree, Pete, I actually thought that my time training to be a chartered accountant was actually the most relevant thing that I'd ever done. And I actually quite enjoyed the exams, really. If you prepare for it, it was all real, it was all relevant. And for the first time, I had done things like physics and chemistry, which I actually didn't find to be very relevant at all. So, and then sort of moving on from that, you go into international business and into multiple sectors, you go into industry, and you've spent a good deal of time in the retail sector in particular, I know. So which of those roles as a CFO have you enjoyed the most, perhaps why? And why is it sometimes that people see retail as a specialist sector as well?
So I would love to say that I had some master plan about staying in retail or whatever. I didn't. The roles that came up at different junctures in my career took me into retail. So for example, I used to work for a business. It's now part of American Greetings. And I worked on the manufacturing side. So I joined straight out of Price Waterhouse on the manufacturing side, but I had a sort of a group role as well. And the FD of the retail business left, and I had been doing a good job in situ with what I was doing. I was only 9 to 12 months into the company. And the group FD came to me and says, right, Les is off to America. We'd like you to step up and come and run as FD the retail business. Didn't know anything about retail. Didn't really know anything about being an FD, if I'm brutally honest with you. But in I went, and I was clearly interested, and people looked at me throughout my career and were looking at certain attributes and how I went about my work, and gave me that opportunity. And it was a fantastic opportunity because it allowed me to really take charge very early on in my career, to become an FD. And then from there, you start to get approached by people in retail that see you and so on. So there was another business in the area called Fine Art Developments, and after we sold our retail business to Clinton Cards, and that was my first big transaction. I got poached effectively by Fine Art to go run their retail business, and so it went on. And then I had a period of time when I left retail and went into manufacturing with United Biscuits. Thoroughly loved it. What I liked about UB was it was almost like going back to my Price Waterhouse days. We had lots of people with a similar approach to life and mentality and sort of age group, if I'm honest. And so that was really good for me. Before I went on to join Next Group, and then after the next group, I left after 4 years and went on to join what became Shop Direct and is now the very group owned by the Barclay Brothers.
Yeah.
And so you asked me, Jeremy, what did I sort of really enjoy going on through that? So for me, by far, and I look back now on it, and one of the jobs, whilst I could look back at a lot of my roles and say I got a lot out of it, the one that I got the most out of it by far was my role at Shop Direct. And the context for that was about a year before I joined that, I got a phone call from a headhunter who said to me, we've heard about you from some people. We'd like you to apply for the FD's job at WH Smith Group. I was working in a part of Next that wasn't mainstream retail. It was financial services and outsourced services and so on. And when I told him the size of the group, which was this particular division, which was sub 200 million at the time, he literally put the phone down on me and said, WH Smith is $1 billion. You're not good enough. We're not going to take this any further. Yeah. At which point I went, okay. Within a year, I was the group CFO of a 2.5 billion turnover business, put into that role, both because of what I did in the run up to that, but also because people that knew me, I knew what I was capable of, said he's the guy for the job. So that was part of it. So sort of the self-validation almost that somebody's trying to hold you back and you're able to push through that glass ceiling. But it was changed. Both of those businesses, you may recall the old Littlewoods and Gus home shopping businesses, old mail order catalogs, which had their heyday, failing businesses. And we took a group of businesses that was losing 200 million a year. In my first quarter, sales were down 16%. And I did look at myself and say, what have I just done? And I ended up with the team and the CEO, and I'll come back to the role that I played in this, but I ended up with the CEO turning that business into becoming effectively a 200 million EBITDA positive business within 2 to 3 years. Fantastic achievement. But numbers aside, and I've just spoken like an accountant, numbers aside, we built a team and a spirit. We only kept people on the bus that wanted to be on the bus. If you didn't want to be on the bus, we allowed you to depart the bus. We brought new people in. We saw people that rose from the ashes, as it were, and were good people, but they were just suppressed. And so it just gave me such a cross-section beyond finance and a view into business that I was able to help transform and play a substantial role in that transformation. And it was great. And to this day, I still feel very passionate about it. And that's part of your introduction. You know, there are some very large retail businesses that need a lot of help at the moment. And, you know,
I can see you're itching to have a go at them as well.
Yeah, maybe, just maybe. We'll see.
Just one thing you said there, because you mentioned teams. I'm going to come on to team and team building in a moment. You just said one thing which I'd like to pick up on as well, because it resonates with me also. And you said you were almost potentially thrust into a role there with not necessarily the experience at a relatively young age, relatively small period of time into a tenure, and the same happened to me. So when
Yeah.
I joined a firm out of practice, my FD left, I think within 6 weeks. So I became an FD within 6 weeks going into industry. And then within 2 years, we'd gone through an IPO. And if I'd actually stopped at that point and said, actually, pause and think, I think I probably would have thought, no, this isn't for me. But one thing springs to mind. It's that I think it was a Richard Branson quote actually that said, if somebody offers you a great opportunity, say yes and think about it afterwards,
And
and then
figure
you
out
can
how you're
pick
going to
that
do it.
up. And I think that's a
Yeah.
real good mindset, as you mentioned, Peter, around why would anybody else do it better than you, I think is a good piece of advice for people. You mentioned teams there, and my experience with you was being quite an astute cricket captain. And we know in some teams and sports like cricket and rugby, the captaincy is pretty important. I think you were quite an astute captain, a bit too lenient with the number 5 batsman at times, I think, in retrospect. But I say I did drive the minibus. So
I felt sorry for him.
Yeah.
He was a nice guy.
good tourist, lived close by.
Yes, exactly.
Good turner upper, I think is how they call it. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, how you run your own business now, and how do you approach team building? You'd mentioned it there in the turnaround at United Biscuits. So, how do you approach team building? What bits of advice can you give our listeners as to the things that we need to do in building a team?
Look, it's always easy I think in situations to try and call out one or two things that matter. There are a number of things that matter. You don't want that list to go on forever and ever, because there will be a few things that really, really do matter. People talk about assets in a company and this, that, and the other. What matters are people, wherever you go. People. And what I loved at the university, I took great pride in captaining my university. I was the first 11 captain of a university. Having represented the guys, we were off asking people for sponsorship money. We wanted to professionalize the team. We turned up for our games and we all looked like we were a collective of whatever riffraffs. And I wanted to professionalize. For me in those days, cricket should look a very professional sport, and it had a certain standard, and I got people behind me, and I think we started to have that catalyst of both that professional approach to our sport, but also the fact that we had a mindset that we were going to win. We had some tough teams in our group. We had people at Durham. Nasser Hussain was at university at the time. These guys were turning up with 3 or 4 county players to play against us. We had to be in the right space, otherwise we might as well not turn up. And I think when you start to create those few North Stars for people, and you have an ability yourself, and they look at you with some credibility, they fall into line and they try and add value and they become part of that team. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did. And I'm one of the things I'm glad to why I'm glad I'm doing this podcast is it's bringing back some very, very fond memories of a time that I look back on and I always go, it was a great time. Yeah, you may not feel that at the time going through, as you come back after Easter holidays and you find that the house is infested with some nonsense. But when you cut through all of that and you take away all of that, it was a great time. And so the team, and we had some good people, we had some great characters. The thing about university, you can't, unlike a business, you can't choose who's around you at that point in time, right? There happened to be people like yourself, and he was there for 1 year, Mike Healy, and Brian Murgatroyd, and people like that, real characters and people that you could build a little unit around. And we had all of that, and it was a coming together moment, really. But you've got to lead, and you've got to be the one that's confident and happy to stand up and do the team talk. And not everybody wants to do that. Some people just want to play a really good part and be part of the team, but not leading the team. I really enjoyed leading the team.
I think I do lots of commentary on sport and business and crossovers, and find that it's completely interchangeable all of the time. And some of the things you mentioned there, we did actually, in terms of that team building, I recall some of the characters being completely different politically, completely different in the way that we went about our studies. Going on tour, I went on tours and drove them anyway for 2 weeks and so on. And so you get to know these people even more and more and more. So again, that's just that diversity of skills, recognizing that not everybody needs to be a 10 out of 10 either. You get somebody who's great in one position or one area of your business that can be seen to be so reliable, and you want them on your team.
I think you touch on a really good point, and I was hoping we wouldn't get political today, but when we look at world politics today, if you're not the same, if you don't represent, then you're completely alienated. And the point you're just making there about the team, there were people with different views. We weren't out socializing at night because we didn't become best of mates, but we came together to do what we needed to do. And we had successes. It was the indoor game, admittedly, but we planned down to the last bit how we were going to beat Durham University with Nasser Hussain and all those guys, and we beat them. Honestly, the success, the elation was off the scale. So you don't have to agree with everybody. You don't have to be friends with everybody. You just have to have that coming together moment where you're aligned and you're trying to deliver a key objective, and you want to be part of that team. Yeah.
And I think also that level of wanting to raise the standards, and you probably don't remember, Peter, I recall having a minor argument with you at one point after a game where, first of all, I think I was in a bad mood because I'd driven the minibus, and so that involved quite a lot of hard work in the morning. But I think we'd played somebody like Lancaster away, if I recall rightly. And I think we were sort of cruising to victory. And I just recall we'd let this, for the last hour or so, we kind of let it slip. And they got back into the game. It's far closer. And I remember saying something like, the game should have been over an hour and a half ago, because when we play Durham, they will not let up for that last hour. We will have people coming in. So I think that, again, in business, that raising the standards or keeping the standards high, I think, again, as a leader and a businessman, it's up to us to be able to do that. And in a coaching capacity as well. I think, again, if you're not setting the standards, then who else is going to do that? And I think, again, Clive Woodward, one of the quotes, I take no credit at all for this, it's Clive Woodward's, but he says, as a leader, every action from a leader has a reaction somewhere. Everything that you do as a leader or a team manager, if you're in a position of responsibility, everything that you do, somebody will notice somewhere, and there will be a reaction to it. So make sure it's positive. So, Peter, some great reflections there. And other than what we've spoken about so far, what were the personal leadership reflections? Have you got any other challenges that you've faced throughout your career that you'd like to share with us?
I think my main challenge was, and this may come as an absolute surprise given what I've just said to you, is a lack of confidence in some of my own capabilities. It started off as being an academic thing where you're surrounded by people that are super bright. I remember when I was trained as an accountant, the scores would come out, and these guys that I was good friends with, always in the first quartile. And I've decided it's not just about being in the first quartile, right? There's so much more if you want to achieve things. Yes, I qualified first time, got everything. You don't always have to be the brightest or the smartest in the room. You just need to play to your strengths. You need to surround yourself with other people that can enhance. And even more so in some of the businesses that I go into, both as my consultancy now, we may not be able to solve all of the problems, but we generally know people that can help with those problems. And it's been, as you go up the ladder, and I've sat with many, many boards, and I'm sure we'll come back to this, but I've sat with many boards, both in a corporate capacity, but as an advisor to boards. They need to find ways of surrounding themselves with people that are that can be more considered, more thoughtful, more challenging, and take on the challenges of their businesses. One of the biggest challenges we've got, Jeremy, at the moment and I can say this categorically, having been into a lot of companies now, is management teams in businesses. They are holding back progress substantially, okay, for a variety of reasons. So for me, I was held back a little bit, but I didn't let that define me. I didn't allow that to be, well, Pete, you may not be the brightest candle in the room, so just go sit in the corner. I'm just not that person. I'm very ambitious. I'm objective. I know what I like to do in life. I know which restaurants I like to eat in nowadays. You got to work for it. Nobody was handing it down. I said to you, my mum saved and gave me £250. Sadly, when she passed on, there was not much more coming my way either, right? So I don't have this great inheritance sat around me. You've got to go make it happen yourself. And I'm lucky, and I think you're born this way. You can fine tune it. I don't think it's something that you can design into people. It's a state of mind. You have to want to go achieve stuff, and you'll go on and do it. So whilst there were limitations in my academic footprint, I didn't let it define me. I didn't let it hold me back. And now I look back and go, wow, I'm glad I didn't let that happen.
I'm really pleased that you brought that point up. As a coach and a mentor now, and clearly I'm not going to mention who I'm coaching or mentoring, you would be amazed at how much in the first or the second session I deal with really senior executives who generally tell me in the first couple of sentences, I can't believe I've got away with it so far. Somebody's going to find me out. I'm not the person it says on the title. I don't know how I'm getting away with it. And you'll be amazed. I guess it's an element of imposter syndrome. And I guess the other one that you want to avoid, and you may not know this, Peter, for the benefit of viewers, the opposite of imposter syndrome is something called the Dunning-Kruger syndrome, and people can attach individuals in the public eye to be associated with the syndrome, but it's basically where people can't understand why they don't agree with them that what they're doing is right. So they have no concept at all that they are wrong. Yeah. But that idea is, who wants to be the smartest person in the room? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And what I say to people, particularly those aspirational CFOs, and saying, actually, do you know what? You being the best CFO probably isn't going to get you to another level. You've got to be a chief officer of the whole of the company, not just your bit, because that will hinder you if I'm coaching you. You've got to be a director or an officer with responsibility for ops, finance, sales, rather than I'm the finance person, I'll speak when the finance person's bit comes up. So really good advice, actually, Peter. Yeah. And so having done all of that, you thought 10 years ago, I guess now, you thought, I'll set up Hexagon Consultants. So what's the story behind that? Because I know that you've dealt with some really visible transactions, really important to the community, really important to the economy. Tell us about Hexagon, Peter.
Yeah, I think again, I just want to step back to just build back into Hexagon. What I liked about my roles is change. I love change. There are people that absolutely hate change. I love change. I love the uncertainty that it brings, and I've been able over the years, I think, to be able to deal with what would appear on the face of it very complex situations and break it down into bite-sized chunks to allow people to get behind it and understand what their role is in solving it. And I'm going to give a bit of credit to the current chief executive of Next. He was chief exec when I was there as well, Simon Wolfson. Simon Wilson, and I don't think he meant this in any sort of derogatory kind of way at the time, but it was said a few years ago. But he says, I want people to understand what I'm doing in a way that I can walk in and talk to the cleaner and they get it as well. Okay. And he just wanted it to permeate through all levels. So if we're speaking in jargon, if we're speaking in acronyms, and I leave 4 people behind in a room of 10, I'm not doing the right job. And so I kind of took that, really resonated with me, and I took that. And so I go into businesses that are needing some change, and that change isn't because they're failing; they could be growing. One of my our clients a few years ago now, but one of our clients is a very successful large electronics manufacturer. They make some of the most leading edge products in the market, but they're all about design and technology. And their operating model wasn't great. And so we're able to break down and look at that and help them plan their businesses across the globe rather than just by individual geography. And so change for me was really important. Shop Direct, biggest change I've dealt with so far. Change on all fronts, and a real right-hand person to the CEO, helping to drive the thinking and the simplicity so that the 28,000 people that we employed at the time could get behind what we were trying to do, and we can report back to them how we were progressing against that. If it gets much more complicated than that, we are not bots, we are not AI machines, we cannot cope with lots and lots of variables. You have to break it down into bite-sized chunks. And so I was finding I'm going into roles, Jeremy, and within 2 to 3 years, I've plateaued and gone, right, okay, what's going on here? And that happened to me at Shop Direct. At year 3, I'm sat there presenting to pension trustees, and nothing against pension trustees. Everybody needs a good pension trustee. And I'm presenting to them, and the words are coming out of my mouth, and going through my head is, what the hell am I doing? Yeah. So through my mind is, what the hell am I doing? Out come the words to the pension trustees about what they want to hear. And I realized that I'm about change. I love that change. So what Hexagon allowed me to do was to deal with multiple clients at a time rather than just one client at a time, and offer up big challenges. And it's evolved my role as CEO into somebody that really focuses on the quality of delivery. We're only a small consultancy. We're sub 10 million in revenue, but we are a consultancy where we take great pride in making sure that the client gets outcomes. They often probably find this pill too big to swallow, given the way the world of consultants has evolved and the reputation of many. But we like to think of ourselves as an extension to management teams for a period of time. If I cannot be part of your team, helping you solve your problems and getting outcomes and results, tangible, not just giving you nice glossy reports, if I can't do that, then I shouldn't be around you. And that's not what we want to do. So we focus, and I think we've won in this area because people allow us into their business. They recognize they have skills themselves, they have limitations within their business, and we bring a skill set to help them deliver on their challenges. So for me, yeah.
I think some really, really strong points that come out of that, Peter. And I'm thinking in terms of a coaching capacity as well. The first thing that I generally say to anybody considering coaching is that you've got to accept that there's this element of change, because if anybody, and I mean individuals or teams of teams, if there's this perception of perfection in an organization or round a table, then that's going to be resistant to change. So the first thing is, actually, we need some support. We need some support from people who've got better skills, better disciplines, and then we can take it on from there. So thank you, Peter, for sharing Hexagon Consultants and what you do. And Peter, you moved from all of those areas. One of the key challenges that I think anybody finds in organizations is going back to your team building skills, getting the right people. And I recall when you and I had a conversation a short time ago, you mentioned one of my jobs now is quality control. What's your approach to recruitment and team building? What are you looking for when you have any number of people now representing you personally and your business partner out to the client, because you can't be everywhere, what are you looking for in terms of people representing you when you recruit?
Yeah, so it's about fit, and again, we invariably, if it's a senior team going in, and they generally are, we often put them in front of the client as well. We don't just turn up with a team and say, right, this is what you're getting, come what may. We think we do a good job in pre-selecting people. You don't always get it right. People turn up for interview. Guess what? Generally, with their best, putting on their best performances. So sometimes it's hard to see through that. But we're looking for both the contribution they can make technically, but how will they interact at client side? Have they got the emotional intelligence to be able to step away and just come and ask questions? If they're running into tricky situations, how they manage it, or do they go headlong into? I have sat in meetings with and one particular person was coming to sort of the end of a long period of time working for us, and then something sort of, I don't know, changed, and this person felt that they can just be very quite forceful with one of my clients, and I pulled them aside. I said, that's not acceptable. That will not be acceptable. That is not how we deal with my clients, our clients. But so yeah, we intervene where we need to. We are looking for people with capability. We generally take experienced people into businesses. We're not interested in, our model can't support. We allow the big guys to do all the training and the graduates, and we that's not our model. When we hit the ground running, we need to understand your challenges and your problems very quickly. We need to be able to put solutions in place for you, and we need to help you execute those if you want us to help execute them. So for that, you need a fair amount of experience. We haven't got it right 100% of the time, but we also move quickly. So if something's wrong, a client expects you to intervene and deal with it, and we do. We don't hesitate. We're not the most expensive of consultants, but we're not the cheapest either. So we make sure that client continues to get value for money.
I'm smiling because I know I was expecting some of those answers from having known you for quite some time. So and really important for people to understand that maybe I don't think you shared any huge magic bullets there. These are things which we can take away to any organization. Finally, Peter, could I draw upon all of those experiences? We've got many people who will listen, who want to improve upon their roles, improve their team working ability. What small words of advice could you give us, maybe with a big impact, for those people thinking, I want to do what Peter AHYE's done. I want to do. What would you say to them in a short number of words?
I'm going to say to them what I said to this lady that works for us. She came over a couple of years ago from Ukraine, and a friend of mine put a post on LinkedIn saying, can anybody offer a job? And I didn't have a job to give her. We hired her, right? Because we felt it was the right thing to do. And she continues to evolve and grow in confidence. And we were talking about things the other day. She came along to one of my meetings. She was watching in and so on. And she was giving me some feedback after. I said, yeah, Anastasia, and you've pretty much just said it, Jeremy, 80% of what I will tell you exists in the public domain. Probably 90% exists in the public domain, okay? They're a good, healthy dose of common sense. But you've got to think about, I didn't just rock up to that meeting that she sat in. I thought about the meeting. We had an agenda. I was planning ahead. I would say to anybody recruiting, be really, really careful about what you're looking for. Spend time, investing some time in making sure you really think about the requirements of the role. All too often I've seen accountants get promoted on technical ability and then the wheels come off the bus. And that's really unfair to the individual as well. So spending a bit of time up front to properly plan, not just about writing a role profile or something like that, but what's our business like? What characteristics are we wanting? How are we going to score and assess this person? Just spend enough time up front to do that. And I think invariably you will have better outcomes than not. It's not bulletproof, but the reality is you'll get better outcomes.
Peter, you've described Hexagon in a good deal of detail. How can we contact you if anybody is watching this? How does somebody say, I want to get in contact with Peter AHYE, I want to get in contact with Hexagon? How do we do that?
Well, look, if anybody has this just wants to chat about stuff, I enjoy talking to people. So send them. We have a website, hexconsultants.com. They can email me, Peter AHYE at hexconsultants.com. I'm very, very approachable. So, or if they know you've got your details, I'm sure you're happy to be a postbag for me.
Happy to be a conduit, Peter.
Yeah. Thank you,
Peter. Thank you so much for your time today. A whistle-stop masterclass, I think, in taking us through all of your years of experience. I'm pretty sure that the audience will have found this really insightful, hugely interesting, real insight into being an entrepreneur. And I think you mentioned something right at the start there. The straight line, it isn't. The ups and downs are in there as well. Didn't quite get onto cricket and the opportunity to select the top 6 for India next year and Australia in the winter. Maybe we'll do that in a podcast in 2025, Peter. But Peter, my privilege to speak with you today. Thank you again for carving out some time. It really is appreciated. Thank you for being my guest on the Clarendon Chronicles podcast.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Peter, thanks again. Bye for now.